Howdy, howdy. So, obviously, the campus is closed today, which I'm not recording this on Saturday. I'm recording this on Thursday night to give you guys more time to review the work. But long story short, prior to going into today's lecture, which will be covering chapter 18, I want to go over a couple things. Number one, if you hear some echoes in the background, they're my gremlin children, okay? Because a 5 year old and a 2.5 year old, they don't get not to scream, and they're in the basement below me. So I apologize for that, but we're making it work. Um, so a couple things, housekeeping before we even move forward. So we talked about mastering, modified mastering, that thing that we were supposed to get with your tuition. Don't even worry about it. All you need to get is the textbook. I will be pulling homework from modified mastering, and then you'll just be turning it in. That being said, you guys really need to be on top of Blackboard a little bit better. I have posted the presentation for chapter 18 for you guys to review, for chapter 1 for you guys to review. There's also a folder called Exam 1 Practice Questions. Those are going to be the questions on your exams. So as we go through the lectures, I'm posting those questions up. This week, I kind of gave you guys a head start. I started submitting some things ahead of time so that you guys could have more time to work on things, okay? I know we're all busy. Also, the one that we need to talk about is uploaded a chapter 18 reading assignment. Just download it from Microsoft and just type inside of it. As long as you get the answers in there, that's all I really care about. That's what's going to be replacing the modified or modified mastering. I'm dyslexic. Those assignments, so you won't need that. You just need the textbook. Also, another thing we're going to be doing to save time is we're going to be doing the quizzes online. So if you also notice, I have submitted through Blackboard quiz 1. Go ahead and take that quiz. It should automatically grade it for you as soon as you take it. And then one of the biggest things that I need to tell you guys is check the announcements. I post announcements on Blackboard. There's a tab on the top of the screen, and it'll say announcements. Click on it because I'm giving you guys information, and I've noticed that not everyone's checking the announcements. You guys need to check the announcements because I'm going to let you guys know some things. As an example, I'm letting you guys know that this is a pre-recording and that I'm going to be uploading it. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So now I'm going to be going into actually chapter 18, which is going to be an introduction to ecology and the biosphere. So biology and society. So penguins, polar bears, and people in peril. 97% of climate scientists agree that global climate is changing due to human activity. The change is driven by a rapid rise in temperatures. The 10 hottest years on record have occurred since 1998. We already are feeling the effects of climate change in more frequent and larger wildfires. Remember the LA ones, increasing coastal flooding, lots of stuff flooding in Florida, and deadly heat waves, altering precipitation patterns that bring out drought in some regions and torrential downpours to others. So basically, the humans are messing some things up, okay? So here we have an image of, well, the title says a polar bear with two cubs on Arctic ice. So climate change is shrinking the permanent sea ice that polar bears use for hunting. They also use it for breeding, okay, to do the thing. They're using the ice blocks, okay? That's not good. If the climate is changing, which it's no longer called global warming, it's called climate change, just so we are not uncultured swine. And so these polar bears need the ice to survive. So biology and society, once again, the penguins peril, polar bears, and the people in peril. So what does climate change mean for the future of life on Earth? Any predictions that scientists make now about the future impacts of global climate change are based on incomplete information. So much remains to be discovered about species diversity, and about complex interactions of organisms, okay, with each other and with their environment. So, how things are working with one another, how do they live together? We respond with a crisis that will definitely change the circumstances, which can be improve or they could worsen. Okay, so understanding the crisis begins with understanding the basic concepts of ecology. So we're going to go back to basics. Okay, so we're going to go through the overview of ecology. So ecology is a scientific study of interactions between organisms and their environment. Once again, we're going back to the scientific study. This isn't just mumbo jumbo. No, there are things that we need to do to deem this as scientific study. So this is a valuable insight that can be gained from discovery-based approach of watching nature and recording its structure and processes. Remember Jane Goodall, this is what she did with the chimpanzees, okay? Hypothesis-driven science performed in nature environments is fundamental to ecology, but ecologies also test hypotheses using laboratory experiments where conditions can be simplified and controlled. Once again, this is scientific study. Some ecologists take a theoretical approach using mathematical and computer models. So here is it says here, like, discover science in a rainforest canopy. This dude here is a biologist and he's collecting insects in a rainforest on the eastern slope of the Andes mountain range in Argentina. I have no idea why he's doing his collection of insects, but that's what he's researching. And so there he is on the canopy of the rainforest in the Andes mountains. So ecology and environmentalists. Technological innovations have enabled people to colonize just about every environment on Earth. So we are taking over space, okay, due to technology. But our survival depends on Earth's resources, which have been profoundly altered by human activities. Environmental problems can be understood by the science of ecology and require decision based on values and ethics. On a personal level, so we're asking ourselves, okay, what are our daily choices that we make and how do they impact ecology? Okay, that's a personal question to yourself. How do you live day to day? I have a hybrid, and I'm not saying, oh, I have a hybrid. No, I'm saying I have a hybrid, therefore I use less gas because I use electricity, which it's not okay. Just because you have an electric car doesn't mean you're a saint. Okay, you're still using power to power the electricity. So, but okay, fine. So I have a hybrid car. All right, that's a daily choice that I choose to help the environment and my ecological impact. Okay. So here's, I don't know if you guys remember, but I'm sure you guys aren't that young. This is a picture from 2010. This is a crew that is cleaning up the burn oil. So there was a oil spill that happened in the Gulf of Mexico in 2010. So you think that was good for the ecology here? Probably not. So a hierarchy of interactions. Many different factors can potentially affect the organism's interaction with the environment. Biotic factors are all organisms in the area and the living components of environment. So biotic factors, they're all living things, okay, that are affecting the area, the ecology. Abiotic factors are the environment's non-living components that include chemical and physical factors such as temperature, light, water, minerals, and air. An organism's habitat is the specific environment where the animals live in, which these all include the biotic and the abiotic factors that it's surrounded by. So the things that are not living and the things that are living, they play a factor in the ecology, okay? So ecology can be divided into 4 increasingly comprehensive levels. So there is an order to ecology. An organism is an individual thing, okay? So the smallest thing, the most simplest form is organismal ecology. And it's concerned with evolutionary adaptations that enable the organism to meet the challenges posed by their abiotic environments. Excuse me. And then we have population ecology, which addresses a population, a group of individuals of the same species living in a particular geographic region. Okay, so you have to live in the same area and you have to be the same species. It's going to affect the population density. So moving on, then we have community ecology, which is concerned with the communities of all organisms that inhabit a particular area. It focuses on how interactions between species affect a community structure and organism. How are different species living together within an area? Okay, that's the community ecology. Ecosystem ecology is concerned with ecosystems, all the abiotic factors of the community of species in a certain area. So it focuses on the energy flow and the cycling of chemicals among the various abiotic and biotic factors. The biosphere is the global ecosystem, so it's the big picture. So examples of questions at different levels of ecology, okay? So we have A, which is, remember we're going from little to big. So we have A, organismal ecology. What questions might we be asking? Okay, so this is just an example that the book is bringing. What range of temperature can red salamander tolerate? Then we move on to population ecology. What kind of questions might you ask in regards to population ecology? An example is, what factors affect the survival of imperial penguin chicks? Then we move on to community ecology. What kind of questions are we asking when we're talking about the community ecology? So, how do predators such as the beech marten affect the diversity of rodents in a community? Ecosystem ecology. What kind of questions are you going to be asking when you're talking about ecosystem ecology? What processes recycle vital chemical elements such as nitrogen within a savanna ecosystem in Africa? Okay. Those questions are just supposed to help you understand the different levels of ecology. Ecology. So, identifying major themes is just basically how the book is asking you to reel it all in, okay? So other organisms may compete with an individual for food and other resources, prey upon it, or change its physical and chemical environment. Which major theme is illustrated by this action? So we have the 5 options, okay? Give you a little bit of time for you to read through that. And what it is, it's interactions within biological systems. Organisms in an ecosystem are connected in many ways, including competition and predation. Living in Earth's diverse environments, abiotic factors of the biosphere. The distribution of life varies on both a global and local scale. Within these different environments, variations occur on even smaller scale. For example, we would find that a lake has several different habitats, and each habitat has a characteristic community of organisms. Patterns in the distribution of life mainly reflect differences in the abiotic factors of the environment. So in this case, we see here, says here, the local variation of environments in a New Zealand wilderness. So here we see the distribution of life that varies on a large scale, okay? So this is an aerial view of the New Zealand wilderness, and there are so many communities and ecologies within this picture. We can see there is a forest, okay? We could see there's a large lake, there's a meandering river, and also there are mountains, okay? And they're all preoccupied with abiotic and biotic factors that play into all of the animals, including plants, algae, animals, different species that all live there, and they all work together, okay? So one of the important things in an ecology is energy source, because life depends on a pathway that transforms energy and matter. So all organisms require an unusable source of energy to live. Solar energy from sunlight is captured by chlorophyll during the process of photosynthesis and powers most of ecosystem. And chlorophyll is that it's essentially like the what makes all the energy in plants, but it's what gives it that green characteristic. So the lack of sunlight is seldom the most important factor limiting plant growth for terrestrial ecosystems. So although shading by trees does create intense competition for light among plants that are growing on the forest floors. So here we have a picture of the distribution of life in the biosphere. The green in the picture corresponds, the green areas correspond with high densities of plant, while the orange corresponds with less productive areas. So if you notice here, let me grab this, let's do purple. Here, all this green, this is going to have, well, we can't really see that. Let's do white. These areas are green, okay? They have high densities of plant, okay? And then all the other areas that you see that are red and orange, these have low densities of plants. So here we go, we're going to do a checkpoint. Solar energy from sunlight captured by chlorophyll during the process of photosynthesis powers most of ecosystems, okay? So which major theme is illustrated by this action? Give you a little bit so you could read. So pathways that transform energy and matter. Because photosynthesis is a pathway that uses energy, light energy, to produce energy, rich molecules from carbon dioxide and water. Energy source. So surprisingly, life also thrives in environments that are completely dark, believe it or not. Hydrothermal vents occur a mile or more below the ocean's surface and are ecosystems powered by chemical autotrophic bacteria that derive energy from the oxidation of inorganic chemicals such as hydrogen sulfide. Bacteria with similar metabolic talents support communities of cave-dwelling organisms. Fun fact, if you ever go into molecular biology, scientists were able to find what's called Taq polymerase, which is an enzyme that brings all the nucleotides in. It's like the glue. That is from one of these crazy environments. Just so fun fact. So here is a deep sea hydrothermal vent, and you would think, imagine this area you're talking about. This is like the area where that lava's coming up. And if you think about it, it's a very volatile environment to live in. And so you'd be like, there's nothing that lives here. No, there's stuff that, if you can see in this image here, there's coral. Okay. This is super, super hot stuff coming out here, right? Because it's a hydrothermal vent. You think the thermal vent's gonna be cold? No, it's hot. But even then, we have these little creatures here. They're called black smokers. I'm sorry. This here's called the black smokers, is what they call them. But what the giant worms are, okay, they live in this community and they can grow up to 2 meters long. So in every community, there's life because this is ecology. Temperature. So temperature is an important abiotic factor because of it affects metabolism. Abiotic, is temperature a living? No, but temperature affects living species organisms. So few organisms can maintain a sufficient active metabolism at temperatures close to 0 degrees Celsius. Temperatures above 45 degrees Celsius destroy the enzymes of most organisms. And most organisms function best with a specific range of environmental temperatures. So that worm, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 45 degrees Celsius around there, and it's crazy that they could live there. Excuse me. So here's an example of an animal species, whatever you want to call it, that can live in different types of temperatures. So this small size relative of rabbit, excuse me, lives at high elevations in the western United States and Canada. And these animals have a high body temperature, which is well suited for chilly climate in the mountain. But on warm days, they actually have to take refuge into crevices, like little holes, probably under the ground, to be honest. Because if not, they're gonna overheat. So they're great at living in chilly temperatures because they have high body temp, but not so great at living in warm days because they're trying to hide from the sun. So water. Water is essential to all life. Aquatic organisms are surrounded by water and face problems of water balance if their solute concentration does not match their surroundings. So for terrestrial organisms, the primary threat is drying out in the air. Many land animals have watertight coverings that reduce water loss. We're going to be seeing these examples. So because we need to keep water to live, some animal species and plants have created an adaptation, such as white watertight coverings. So if you see which scales on a coralline or anal lizard, they have that waxy film on their scales so that they don't lose water. And then here, B is a leaf's waxy coat. That's actually called a carnauba. And the wax from these leaves are used to make lipstick and mascara, as a fun fact. Another thing that's important in ecology is inorganic nutrients. So the distribution and the abundance of photosynthetic organisms depends on the availability of inorganic nutrients such as compounds of nitrogen and phosphorus. So soil structure, pH, and nutrient content often play major roles in determining the distribution of plants because plants use all of those as building blocks, okay? And in many aquatic ecosystems, low levels of nitrogen and phosphorus limit the growth of algae and photosynthetic bacteria. Another little thing is inorganic nutrients is oxygen. So I don't know if you guys have ever purchased a fish or a betta fish from Petco, but if you have ever had fish, they give you this little filter. It looks like a little filter with it's like a little rock with holes, and you run the pump through it and it makes little bubbles that goes up. That is important because an inorganic nutrient to fish is oxygen, and it has to be diffused into the water. So other aquatic factors and other terrestrial factors that affect ecology. Aquatic but not terrestrial ecosystems are more limited by the levels of oxygen dissolved in water, salinity, currents, and tides. So terrestrial but not aquatic ecosystems are more limited by wind, storms, or fire. So checkpoint, okay? Why is solar energy such an important factor in most ecosystems? Let's think about that. So solar energy captured by the process of photosynthesis provides most of the organic fuel and building material for organisms in those ecosystems. The evolutionary adaptations of organisms. The ability of the organisms to live in Earth's diverse environments demonstrate the close relationship between ecology and biology. Natural selection, okay, we heard about this before. Natural selection results from the interactions between organisms and their environments. Remember, survival of the fittest, survival of the one that could survive the environment because they're well suited, okay? Events that occur in short term during the course of an individual's lifetime may translate into effects over longer scale of evolutionary time. So after a period of lower than average rainfall, resistant individuals may be more prevalent in population. That's an example of evolution. So if you don't have rainfall, the animals that require a lot of water, probably the fish that live in little ponds, that pond's probably going to dry out. They're not going to exist. They're not going to survive. But if you had, for example, a lizard that might not need a lot of water because they have great adaptations to reserving their water, they might outlast that fish that really heavily relies on water. That's what they're talking about as that being an example of evolution. So adjusting to the environmental variability. The abiotic factors in a habitat may vary from year to year, seasonally, or over the course of a day. As an example, it's gonna be really cold this weekend. Okay, that's humans adjusting to environmental variability, which is why we're not having class on Saturday. I don't know when you guys are watching this, but this is why we're doing pre-recordings, because we are adjusting to the environmental variability. Okay. So another example, because I just gave you one, is birds may adjust to cold by migrating to warmer regions, grow heavier feathers or fluff off their feathers to trap more heat. But these responses, which occur during the lifetime of an individual, they don't qualify as evolution, but they change in population. So this is the example of I don't know if you've ever seen this, because I mean you should have. We live in a cold city, but this is a physiological response that birds have that do not migrate. Not the ones that like fly away to warmer sites. I didn't know this, but now I know it. They have this physiological response where they like fluff up their feathers because when we're cold we get goosebumps. When the birds are cold, their bodies kind of get goosebumps, and their muscles will elevate their feathers so they look all fluffy, as you see in the picture, and that actually creates insulation pockets to keep the bird warm. So that's pretty cool. Other physiological responses. So, acclimation is a gradual, reversible physiological adjustment that occurs in response to the environmental change, like we talked about with the bird. The ability to acclimate is generally related to the range of environmental conditions a species naturally experiences. Among vertebrates, birds, and mammals, they can generally tolerate the greatest temperature extremes because they are endotherms. And ectotherms, which are like reptiles, they can tolerate only a small differentiation of a small range of temperature. So ectoderms rely on the environment's temperatures to regulate their own temperature, and that's could be advantageous. That's why you end up seeing reptiles sit in the sun. They got to warm up. But we, as humans, we are endotherms. We do not rely on the outside environment or outside temperatures to regulate our own temperature. So that's why vertebrates, birds, and mammals, which include us, we're able to withstand extreme temperatures much more than reptiles, as an example. Anatomical responses. So many organisms respond to environmental challenges with some type of change in body shape and structure. When the changes are reversible, such as a thicker fur coat in the winter, the response is an example of acclimation, right? Because they're getting accustomed to the changes. Other anatomical changes are irreversible over a lifetime of an individual. So environmental variations can affect growth and development so much that they may be remarkable differences in body shape. This is what's known as flagging that happen in certain trees. So, I think I got rid of that slide. Anywho, the tree looks like slanted kind of because the wind pushed its branches to the side. That's what's called flagging. I must have got rid of that slide. Let me double check. Well, anywho. So this is an example. You have the Arctic fox in the winter versus the summer. So because of the changes in temperature, you can see here that the Arctic fox in the colder climate is white, and then once you have the warmer days, they end up having a much darker coat. This is the picture that I was talking about with flagging. The wind is an abiotic factor that causes the change in the morphology of the tree. So we're changing the shape of the tree due to the wind, and this is because plants have roots and they're not able to move. So they tend to adapt to these things. Well, they're going to have to. So we're going to do a checkpoint again. This is what the book wants us to do, to reel it all in. So reptilian scales have a waxy coat on many leaves. Reptilian scales and the waxy coating of many leaves reduce water loss. So which major theme is illustrated by this action? So this would fall under the relationship of structure to function. The structure of the molecules, like the keratin in reptilian scales, and the wax that coats plants, leaves, and creates a watertight barrier so that they have a reduction in water loss. Behavioral responses. In contrast to plants, most animals can respond to an unfavorable change in the environment by moving to a new location. Ectotherms, including reptiles, maintain a responsibility. I'm sorry, responsibility. Girl, I'm dyslexic, sorry. Maintain a reasonably steady body temperature by shunting between sun and shade. So the reptile depends on its environment to regulate its temperature. So they're going to be shifting where they are. If they're cold, they're gonna go to sit in the sun basking. If they're overheated, they're gonna go to the shade. Another example is the migration of birds. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, but in the summertime, I live in the city. We get these like green parrots. They'll migrate here in the summer, but then they'll fly away to warmer places in the winter. Um, Humans have an especially rich range of behavioral responses. And here's an example. This is us because right now it's cold. And this is a response that Morton College did due to the freezing temperatures. By the way, I still have to go to work, my other job. And so what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I'm going to change my behavioral response, okay? And I'm going to be dressed for the temperature. So here in this picture, people are dressed for the weather, and it's so they could regulate the temperatures of their body. And this is a response that humans do to our environment. Biomes. So we're shifting a little bit here. A biome is a major terrestrial or aquatic life zone, characterized by vegetation type in terrestrial biomes or the physical environment of aquatic biomes. Aquatic biomes occupy roughly 75% of the Earth's surface and are determined by the salinity and other physical factors. So salinity meaning how much salt they contain, okay? Freshwater biomes have a salt concentration of less than 1%, where marine biomes typically have a salt concentration of around 3%. Freshwater biomes. We're going to elaborate a little bit more here. Freshwater biomes cover less than 1% of Earth and contain a mere 0.01 of its water. But they harbor a disproportionate share of biodiversity, an estimated 6% of all described species. So we depend on freshwater biomes for drinking water, for crop irrigation, sanitation, and industry. Freshwater biomes fall into two broad groups. So there's standing water, which includes lake and ponds, and then you have flowing water, which includes rivers and streams. And we could clearly, hopefully, in the definition, see what the difference is. Standing water, it's not moving. Lakes and ponds. Flowing water, rivers and streams, they're flowing. There's movement. So lakes and ponds. Standing bodies of water range from small ponds to large lakes, such as the North American Great Lakes. In the lakes and large ponds, communities of plants, algae, and animals are distributed according to the depth of water and distance to the shore. There are two regions within lakes or bodies of water, okay? And you have the photic zone, and it's named this because light is available for photosynthesis, including shallow water near the shore and the upper level of the water away from the shore, okay? And then you have the aphotic zone, and it's deeper. It has lower light levels, and therefore it's going to support less photosynthesis. Okay. Here is a satellite view of the Great Lakes. So standing bodies of water can range from small ponds, which are only a few square meters in area, to large lakes such as the Great Lakes. And I love being part of the Midwest, and I'm so proud to be part of this region. Those are the Great Lakes. Great Lakes. And I don't know if any of you guys have ever taken a boat into any of the lakes, but I have done Lake Michigan. It's freezing. Okay, take a boat out. freezing even in August because that's how big the lake is. Okay, it needs lots of energy to warm it up. But anywho, point is that these are standing bodies of water, and they're different in size range. You can have little ponds, and you can have huge lakes. Lakes and ponds. So the benthic realm is the bottom part of all aquatic biomes. So it's made up of the sand and the organics and the inorganic sediments, and is occupied by organisms that may include algae, aquatic plants, worms, insects, larvae, mollusks, and microorganisms. So I don't know. I'm a big lake girl because there's no sharks or alligators or crocodiles, or jellyfish. And if you ever go swimming in a lake and you stand in this really soft feeling sand, almost sometimes a little bit gooey because of the algae, that's what's the benthic realm. Phytoplankton is a collective name for microscopic algae and cyanobacteria that drift near the surface of the aquatic biomes. The amount of the phytoplankton, I don't know, I couldn't say that word, growth in a lake or pond is typically regulated by the amount of nitrogen and phosphorus in that body of water, which is funny because I don't know if you guys watch SpongeBob, but Plankton, he's a phytoplankton. So the checkpoint, our book wants us to know, why does sewage cause heavy oh, I already clicked that, sorry. Okay. Well, moving on. I'm so sorry. Hold on. See if I could go back. Okay. I'll post that for you guys. So here we have the zones in a lake. We talked about the photic zone, right? So this is the area we're talking about here. This is the area, okay? I think it's a good way of memorizing is like photosynthesis. Therefore, there's going to be light. You need light for photosynthesis. So the photic zone, it's going to be where there's light that's permissible. And then you have the benthic realm. Okay, so you're going to get all that inorganic mollusks, all that stuff there. And then you have the aphotic zone. So this right here, there's not much happening as far as photosynthesis is concerned. Okay. Rivers and streams. Rivers and streams are bodies of flowing water and generally support quite different communities of organisms than lakes and ponds. So a river or a stream changes greatly between its source. So now perhaps a spring or snowmelt in the mountains. Excuse me. And the point at which it empties into a lake or an ocean near the source of a stream, the water is usually cold, low in nutrients, and clear. Downstream, the water is usually warmer, murkier, and wider and slower. Many streams and rivers have been affected of population from human activity. I'm sorry, pollution from human activities and dams. So here we have a picture of a stream in the Appalachian Mountains. So rivers and streams, which are bodies of flowing water, generally support communities of organisms quite different from those of lakes and ponds. We have what's called wetlands. A wetland is a A wetland is a transitional biome between an aquatic ecosystem of a terrestrial one. So it's covered with water either permanently or periodically, and wetlands support the growth of aquatic plants that are rich in species diversity, migrating waterfowl, and many other birds depend on the wetland pit stops for food and shelter during their journeys. Wetlands provide water storage areas. They also help prevent flooding, and they improve water quality. They're basically filters for water. So wetlands are very, very helpful to ecology. So here's a picture of a wetland near Kent, Ohio. And wetlands also include swamps, bogs, and marshes. Marine biomes. Marine biomes are diverse, ranging in vivid coral reefs near the surface and dependent on sunlight to perpetually dark realms in the deepest regions. So the pelagic realm includes the open water of the ocean, and in freshwater biomes, the seafloor is known as the benthic realm. So in sunlight areas, photosynthesis by photoplankton and multicellular algae provide energy for a diverse community of animals. Zooplankton is a free-floating animal, so this is microscopic one, and their abundance in the uh, pelagic realm. So here we have a picture of everything we just described. So in freshwater biomes, the seafloor is known as the benthic realm, right? Right there. Okay. And the pelagic realm in the oceans includes like open water. So we're talking about right here. Okay. In shallow areas such as the continental shelf, a photic zone includes both the pelagic and the benthic regions, and then in these sunlight areas, photosynthesis by photoplankton and multicellular algae provides energy. Okay, so we're talking about the both this one here and this one here. Okay, so these areas are going to have photosynthesis, but then remember, not in the aphotic zone. Okay. Marine biomes. The coral reef biome occurs in the photic zone of warm tropical waters in scattered locations around the globe. So a coral reef is built up slowly by successive generations of coral animals, a diverse group of cnidarians that secrete a hard external skeleton, and by multicellular algae encrusted with limestone. The physical structure and productivity of coral reefs support a huge variety of invertebrates and fish. Here we have a picture of a coral reef in the Red Sea off the coast of Egypt. And as you can see, there's tons of different species and communities living in this area, this coral reef. That's why they're so important. Marine biome. So the photic zone extends down to a maximum of 200 meters in the ocean, or 656 feet. It's dimly lit, and it's sometimes called the twilight zone. And it's basically what's dominated there, what lives there mostly is small fish and crustaceans. I wouldn't really worry too much about photic zone and benthic zone. I think we went over that pretty well. So we also have the intertidal zone, which is where the ocean meets land. The shore is pounded by waves during high tide, and the bottom is exposed to the sun and drying winds during low tide. And then the rocky intertidal zone is home to many sedentary organisms, such as sea stars, barnacles, and mussels, and they attach to rocks. Excuse me. And they have to, otherwise they're going to get washed away by those crazy oceans, the waves. Here's an image of those organisms that live in the intertidal zone. So we have the sea stars, barnacles, and the mussels that live in this area. So we also have estuaries, which is a transitional area between a river and an ocean. The saltiness of estuaries range from nearly that of fresh water to that of the ocean. With the waters enriched by nutrients from the rivers, estuaries, like freshwater wetlands, are among the most productive areas on Earth. Estuaries are also crucial nesting and feeding areas for waterfowl. So here is a beautiful picture of a waterfall in an estuary on the southeast coast of England, and I'm pretty sure this picture is also showing us this is where they have geese mating. So how does climate affect terrestrial biome distribution? Terrestrial biomes are primarily determined by climate, especially temperature and rainfall. Earth's global climate patterns are largely the result of the input of solar energy and the planet's movement in space. So the equator receives the greatest intensity of solar radiation. Warm, moist air at the equator rises and then cools and then forms clouds, and that's when you have rainfall. This largely explains why rainforests are concentrated in the tropics, and the region of the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. So here we have an image of how Earth is unevenly heated. So at the equator, we're going to have, which we're talking right here, okay, the equator, we're going to have the most direct sunlight hit there, okay? So this is going to be the warmest part, right, of Earth. And then you have here, as we go more north, a low angle of incoming lights, okay? Same thing for the bottom here, low angle of incoming light. So it's warm, and then it's less warm, less warm, less warm, and it's warm over here, and it gets less warm and less warm and less warm as we go down, okay? And this is the area where it's the warmest. So we also have, in addition to this, the uneven heating of Earth produces various climates. This is due to winds as well. And so the trade winds below the air masses away from the equator, and then the air dries as it passes 23.5 degrees, as we see here, on both sides of the equator, and then they cross the temperate zones. As the air dries and cools, it descends at 30 degrees on north and south. So we're talking, now we're moving here, okay? Okay. And then descending dry air absorbs moisture, right? Because you could see there, it's absorbing the moisture. And some air continues towards the pole, while some circulates back towards the equator, becoming moist again as it passes the tropics, warms, and then it rises, okay? As it's going to be rising back again, you're going to have ascending moist air releases moisture, so it's going to be raining. Okay, so how climate affects terrestrial biome distribution. Latitudes between the tropics and the Arctic Circle and the Antarctic Circle are called temperate zones. Generally, these regions have milder climates than the tropic or polar regions. So, a checkpoint. Why is there so much rainfall in the tropics? We kind of just went over that. So, air at the equator rises as it warms by direct sunlight, and as the air rises, it cools. Thus, cloud formation and rainfall cause cool air, and it holds less moisture than warm air. So, how climate affects terrestrial biomes distribution? Again, climate is also affected by the proximity to large bodies of water and the presence of landforms such as mountain ranges. Mountains affect climate in two major ways. So, the first way is air temperatures drop as elevation increases. As a result, driving up a tall mountain offers a quick tour of several biomes. Second, mountains can block the flow of cool air from a coast because it's radically different on the opposite side of the mountain range. So here we have that exactly. So it's how mountains affect rainfall. So the coast range is a low mountain range, while the Sierra is much higher. We can see that in the image. Moist air from over the Pacific Ocean blows towards the land and travels up and over the small coast range. As the air rises and it cools, it rains, making the coast range and inland valley green. So we see the water's there, it's going to cause vegetation. And then air continues to flow inland until it hits the wall of the Sierra Nevada mountains, where it's forced up and over the high mountain peaks. Because the mountains are high, the air cools as it rises over them, and the rain falls on the windward or the Pacific side of the Sierra, with snow falling on the peaks, and then air that travels over the Sierra and descends to the eastern side is therefore dry, forming a rain shadow desert on the east side of the Sierra. So terrestrial ecosystems are grouped into biomes primarily on the basis of their vegetation. The geographic distribution of plants and thus the biomes largely depend on climate, with temperature and rainfall often the key factors determining the kind of biome in a particular region. If the climate in two geographically separate areas is similar, they may have the same biome. Organisms in widely separated biomes, they're like that because of the convergent evolution. And so in this area, they're going to have similar traits because they're similar environments. Okay, so here we have a map of the major terrestrial biomes. There's a lot, okay? So we could see here there's different types. We have a tropical forest, savanna, desert, capral, temperate grasslands, and so forth. They're all color-coded, um, so you could definitely look at that chart if you choose to. So obviously we just saw the figure. So the graph showed a range of precipitation and temperature that characterizes terrestrial biomes. And by studying the plots of this graph, we can compare these abiotic factors in different biomes. Today, concern about global warming is generating intense interest in the effect of climate on vegetation patterns. Scientists are finding shifts in latitude of biome, and so it basically is decreasing in snow and ice coverage, and it's also changing the length of growing seasons. So here we have a chart, and it's a climate graph for some major biomes in North America. And so you see here the x-axis is an annual mean of precipitation in centimeters, and the y-axis is the annual mean temperature in degrees Celsius. And so you're noticing here that the climate, the precipitation here, the higher it goes, right? The higher it goes in these regions, there's more precipitation. Okay, but you could also see it kind of makes sense in different areas. As an example, the tundra, you're not really going to get a lot of change in temperature, and therefore you're not really going to get much change in precipitation either. So terrestrial biomes. Today, concern about global warming has generated intense interest in the effect of climate on vegetation patterns. Scientists are documenting shifts in latitude of biome borders, there decreases in snow and ice coverage, and changes in the length in growing seasons. At the same time, many natural biomes have been fragmented and altered by human activity. Um, we have here another biome, tropical forests, which occur in equatorial areas, so near the equator, where temperatures warm year round. And the type of vegetation is determined primarily by rainfall. So the layered structure of tropical rainforests provide many different habitats. Tree tops form a closed canopy of over one or two layers of small trees and a shrub understory. Rainfall is less plentiful in other tropical forests. Tropical dry forests predominate the low areas, and they have a prolonged dry season and scarce rainfall time, or rain time. So, tropical rainforest in Borneo. Why are climbing plants common in tropical forests? And when they mean that, it's like tall trees. So, climbing is a plant adaptation for reaching sunlight in a closed canopy where sunlight reaches the rainforest floor. So, it's basically they're competing for sunlight. We have another biome, it's a savanna. So, savannas are dominated by grasses and their scattered trees. There are warm year round and experience rainfall of roughly 30 to 50 centimeters, or roughly 12 to 20 inches per year, with a dramatic seasonal variation. Fire caused by lightning or human activity is an important abiotic factor in the savanna. Many of the world's large grazing animals and their predators inhabit savannas, which include zebras and many species of antelope, lions, and cheetahs. But the dominant plant eaters in the savanna is insects, especially ants and termites. So here we have a picture of the savanna in the Serengeti plain in Tanzania. And so the map shows that the savanna needs high temperatures, low precipitation, and fire, and that savannas are found in small swarts on either side of the equator in South America, Africa, and Asia and Australia. Deserts. Deserts are the driest of all biomes, and they're characterized by low and unpredictable rainfall of less than 30 centimeters a year. So that's less than 12 inches. And and they may be very hot or relatively cold. Did you know that? Deserts could be cold. Desert vegetation typically includes water-storing plants such as cacti and deeply rooted shrubs. Common inhabitants include various of snakes, lizards, sea-eating rodents, and arthropods such as scorpions and insects. And so evolutionary adaptations of desert plants, they include a remarkable array of mechanisms to conserve water because they have to, right? Because deserts, there isn't water, so they're going to have to find adaptations to be there. So here you have the Sonoran Desert, and it's basically showing that desert temperatures are cold to hot, while precipitation is low, and the desert tends to be found around 30 degrees north and south latitudes and in rain shadows of mountain ranges. Chaparral. The climate that supports chaparral vegetation results mainly from cool ocean currents circulating offshore and producing mild, rainy winters and hot, dry summers. This biome is limited to small coastal area, some in California, and the largest region of chaparral surrounds the Mediterranean Sea. Chaparral vegetation is adapted to periodic fires they're caused by lightning, and many plants contain flammable chemicals that burn fiercely, especially where brush has accumulated. So here is a picture of a chaparral in California. So basically, chaparral corresponds with warm temperatures, low precipitation, and fire, and it's found in limited areas on the west coast of North and South America and the Mediterranean, South Africa, and Western Australia, as you can see indicated by the picture. So temperate grasslands. Temperate grasslands have some characteristics of tropic savannas but are mostly treeless, except along rivers or streams, and are found in regions of relatively cold winter temperatures. Rainfall averages between 25 and 75 centimeters per year, with frequent severe droughts, and it's too low to support forest growth. So there's not enough water for the trees. Periodic fires and grazing by large mammals also prevent invasion of woody plants. Many birds nest on the ground. Temperate grasslands once covered much of North America. Here's an example. Oh dear, I'm going to butcher this, but this is grasslands in Saskatchewan, Canada. The temperate grasslands correspond with cold to hot temperatures, low precipitation, and fire, and are found in central North America, small patches on the east coast of South America and Africa, and in large swaths across Asia. We have temperate broadleaf forest, which occurs through mid-latitude where there's sufficient moisture to support the growth of large trees. So we're going to have annual precipitation, which is relatively high at 75 to 150 centimeters, which is 30 to 60 inches, and it's usually even year throughout the year. And the temperature varies seasonally over a wide range, with hot summers and cold winters. In the northern hemisphere, dense strands of deciduous trees, which drop their leaves before the winter, are trademarks of temperate forest. This is where we live, pretty much. So we're going to have the trees that drop their leaves in the winter. So many invertebrates live in the soil and the thick layer of leaf litter that accumulates on the forest. Some animals like squirrels grab them and use them for their nests. Many mammals that inhabit these forests enter a dormant winter state called hibernation, and some birds they migrate to warmer climates. Virtually all original temperature broadleaf forests in North America were cut for timber or cleared for agriculture or development. These forests tend to recover after disruption, and today we're seeing deciduous trees growing in underdeveloped areas. So humans have affected temperate broadleaf forests because we cut all the trees for building our homes and using it for building materials, for firewood, etc. Yeah. And so this is an example that we have of the temperate broadleaf forest in Maine in the autumn. Okay. And so checkpoint says here, how does the loss of leaves function as an adaptation? Like how do the loss of leaves function as an advantage or adaptation for deciduous trees to cold winters? And so the reason why it's advantageous is because, or what the function is because it's reducing loss of water from the trees when water content can be replaced because of the frozen soil. Coniferous forests. Coniferous forests is a northern hemisphere. They're dominated by cone-bearing evergreen trees, and they include northern coniferous forest, or taiga, the largest terrestrial biome on Earth. Temperate rainforests are found along the coastal North America from Alaska to Oregon, and also coniferous forests. So here we have the northern coniferous forest in Finland. As we could see behind the coniferous forest, we have the northern lights. Tundra. The tundra covers expansive areas of the Arctic between the taiga and the polar ice. It is characterized by permafrost, which is permanently frozen subsoil, bitterly cold temperatures, high winds, and very little annual precipitation. Tundra vegetations include small shrubs, grasses, mosses, and lichens. On a very high mountaintop at all latitudes, including the tropics, high winds and cold temperatures create plant communities called alpine tundra. Although alpine tundra is similar to the Arctic tundra, they're permafrost underneath the alpine tundra. So here's a beautiful picture of the Arctic tundra in the Yukon Territory in Canada. So global warming is melting permafrost in some areas in the tundra. What biome would you expect to replace tundra in these areas? The answer is taiga. We're nearing the end, guys. Let's hang in there. At least we're at home and not having to come to campus to watch this lecture in person. So polar ice. Polar ice covers the land of high latitudes north of the Arctic tundra in the northern hemisphere and in Antarctica in the southern hemisphere. Only a small part of these land masses is free of ice or snow during the summer. Nevertheless, small plants such as moss and lichens eat out of a living, and invertebrates such as nematodes, mites, and wingless springtails inhabit the frigid soils. Nearby sea ice provides feeding platforms for animals such as polar bears and penguins and seals. Polar marine biome provides the food that sustains these birds and mammals. In the Antarctic, penguins feed at sea, eating a variety of fish, squid, and small shrimp-like crustaceans known as krill. Antarctic krill are important food source for many species of fish, seal, squids, seabirds, penguins, and filter-feeding whales. These animals depend on the sea ice for breeding as a refuge from predation. The amount of the sea ice declines. It basically has a consequence to all the living animals because it does shorten their lifespan. So that's definitely not good. And also, that being said, that also has created the krill habitats to be shrinking, and therefore all of those animals that eat the krill will be negatively impacted by that because they won't have a food source. So here we have the polar ice as in just a picture form in Antarctica. Beautiful. So here we go. Here's where we're reeling it all in. Human impacts on biomes. For hundreds of years, people have been using increasingly effective technologies to capture and produce food, to extract resources from the environment, and to build cities. It is now clear that the environment costs of these enterprises are staggering. Sustainability is the goal of developing, managing, and conserving Earth's resources in ways that meet the needs of people today without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. How do we affect the forests? About 3/4 of Earth's land surface has been altered by thousands of years of human occupation. Most of the land that we've appropriated is used for agriculture. Another hefty chunk is covered by the asphalt and the concrete of development, and changes in the vegetation are especially dramatic in the regions like the tropic forests that escape large-scale human intervention. Satellite photos are going to be showing you what humans have done in Brazil. So here we go. Satellite photos of Rondônia area in the Brazilian rainforest. So as you could see, development is that tan color. And if you look at 1986, the development was remote. It was barely starting, right? And now in 2001, it's the same area, but if you notice, there's less green, meaning there's less vegetation, less land, and there's more concrete, more disruption. Also, every year, most forest land is cleared for agriculture. Unsustainable agricultural practices have degraded much of the world's cropland so severely that it's unusable. Researchers have estimated that replacing worn out farmland can account for 80% of deforestation occurring today. Okay, so we're cutting the forests so that we could have crops. Tropical forests are also being cleared to grow palm oil for products such as cosmetics and a long list of packaged foods. Other forests are being lost to logging. There's pollution, and the problems are hitting the carnivorous especially hard. So here we have them getting rid of a tropical forest in Indonesia so they can do what? Have a palm oil plantation. So land uses that provide resources just as fuel for food and for shelter are clearly beneficial to us as humans, but natural ecosystems also provide services that support the human population, which include these natural ecosystems help purify the air and the water. They help to recycle nutrients and for recreation. Freshwater. The impact of human activities on freshwater ecosystem may pose a greater threat to life on Earth than damage to terrestrial ecosystems. Freshwater ecosystems are being polluted by large amounts of nitrogen and phosphorus compounds that run off from heavily fertilized farms. Other pollutants, including industrial waste, also contaminate freshwater habitats and groundwater. Some regions of the world face dire shortages of water, and this is overuse of groundwater irrigation, extended droughts, and poor water management practices. We also have climate change. How are we affecting climate change as humans? Rising concentrations of carbon dioxide and certain other gases in atmosphere are changing global climate patterns. This was the overarching conclusion of the assessment report released in the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change in 2014. Thus, there's no debate among scientists about whether climate change is occurring. Remember, we're not calling it global warming. We are now saying climate change. We will not be uncultured swine. Okay. The greenhouse effect of global warming. Why is Earth's atmosphere becoming warmer? Like glass in a greenhouse or a car on a summer hot day, certain gases in Earth's atmosphere are transparent to solar radiation but absorb or reflect heat. Some of these greenhouse gases are natural, including carbon dioxide, water vapor, and methane. Others, such as chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, found in some aerosol sprays and refrigerants, are synthetic. And all of this is causing those gases to be trapped, thus causing the greenhouse effect in the atmosphere. So this is the greenhouse effect. You have the sunlight coming in, right? Oh dear. Okay, guess I'll use my little mouse here. So we have the sunlight coming in, right, into the atmosphere, hitting the ground, and that energy is being radiated back into space, right? but some of it's being trapped by the greenhouses because you have methane and carbon dioxide and all these other gases that are basically creating a little cap, and all the heat isn't able to escape anymore to space. And that's what's causing climate change. So this is our last slide. We did not cover the water cycle. If you wish, you could cover it yourself for chapter 18. I think it was a lot of material that I condensed. Greenhouse effect also, where we're going over it in the slide. But all of the questions for your exams will be posted on those practice exam questions in the folder. So definitely go through those. That being said, that lecture is over today. Read chapter 18, go over your reading assignments, because you're definitely going to need points so you can get an A in this class. Take that quiz. I'm giving you guys more than enough time to do it. And keep an eye on the announcements. I will be notifying you as far as what we will be doing or what we won't be doing for the lab this week. Okay, stay warm. Okay, no need to buy the modified mastering that module, but you do need the book. Okay, you will need the book so that you guys could do your homework assignments. All right. Yeah, stay warm.